So why follow a madhab? First of all, I think it's very important for us to understand that there's no conflict between following a madhab and following the Quran and the Sunnah. Many times people set this up as a false dilemma. So either you follow the Quran and Sunnah directly, and that's good or bad depending on which side of the divide you fall on, or you follow a madhab, and that's either good or bad depending on which side of the divide you fall on, and then that's it. So you have those two choices. Follow the Quran and the Sunnah, or follow a madhab. But we should not see this as an issue that involves this sort of false dilemma. We should see that there's an excluded middle that allows us to reconcile between these two positions, and that's a third position, and that is seeing the madhab as a tool which allows us to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. So the madhab is like a binocular. If you might try to look at a distant mountain and you can't see any details on the mountain, so you get some binoculars and you focus, and now you can see the trees and you can see the animals that are on that mountain. So similarly, the madhab are a set of binoculars that allow us to see the Quran and the Sunnah with greater clarity. So it's not something that moves us away from the Quran and Sunnah, it's something that allows us to see them with greater clarity. So I think it's very important for us to understand that. At the heart of this issue is a concept that's called taqleed. And so again, some people, depending on which side of the divide you fall on, they say taqleed is bad. And some people say taqleed is good. But seldom does anyone actually define the term. What does it mean? Sometimes you hear something like blind following, but that's not what taqleed is. The ulama, they say taqleed ittiba'u hukm al-ghayr biduni ma'rifati dalilihi. To follow a qualified scholar without knowing his or her evidence. That's what taqleed is. And in that sense, taqleed has existed since the beginning of this ummah because of a fundamental aspect of human civilization. And that's namely that civilization is founded on specialization. I'll say that again because it sounded like it rhymed. Civilization is founded on specialization. With the advent of agriculture and animal husbandry, productivity in terms of food production reached a point where most people would not have to be involved in producing food. And that freed them up to pursue other endeavors which collectively made civilization possible. So the faqih is just a specialist who uses his or her time to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, to understand those tools which allow us to understand the Quran and the Sunnah, and then others who use their time to grow food, who use their time in industry, who use their time in education and other fields of education. They go to the faqih just as the faqih goes to a specialist called the doctor when he or she gets ill. And if the doctor didn't spend most of his or her time specializing in medicine, the faqih would have no one to go to. In our day and age, when the car breaks down, we take the car to the mechanic. And if the mechanic didn't have the time to master the art of understanding and repairing cars, then we wouldn't have the mobility that we have in our society. The doctor and the mechanic, when they have an issue in their religion, they go to the faqih. And the faqih, the specialization of the faqih occurs within the context of a madhab. And some people might think they're being excluded. But those people who follow People like Nasruddin al-Albani, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on his soul, are following a madhab unless they've memorized Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, pray as you've seen me pray. Unless they've memorized that book from cover to cover, they memorize all the hadith in the book, they know the hadith of those who take a different opinion, because ma'rifatul khilaf is a big part of fiqh, then they're following the madhab of Nasruddin al-Albani. Unless they know, brother or sister, why do you put your feet up against the other people's feet? Do you know the hadith? Do you know the arguments for and against? Why do you return your hands to your chest after you come up from ruku'? Do you know the hadith for that? Do you know the discussion of the fuqaha for that? Do you know, though, the reason that most of the people in the Sunni tradition, the Hanbalis, Shafi'is, Malikis, and the Hanafis, why they don't do that? If you don't know all of that, then you're a muqallid. And you're following a madhab that has its usul, that has its principles. And so this is a reality that existed from the earliest days of Islam. Amongst the Sahaba, there were 7 who are known for giving fatwa. And in that, they all had a set of hadith that was sometimes exclusive to them. And they had various ways of understanding those. They had their own madhhab. And those 7 were Imam Ali, Umar radiallahu an, Abdullah bin Mas'ud, Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Abbas, Zayd bin Thabit, and Aisha radiallahu anha. The other Sahaba would go to them for fatwa. The other Sahaba would go to them for direction in their religion. And none of them is reported to have asked, what is your dalil for this opinion you're giving me? If you've heard otherwise, ya ahlan wa sahlan, you can bring me the information so I can be enriched and enlightened by that.